Welcome to Biology Made Easy. Today we are discussing species diversity and why it is important to study it. Please, if this is the first time you are encountering our channel, do subscribe, give us your likes, and place your questions in the comment section. Welcome. Species diversity, also known as species biodiversity. What is it all about? An ecologist chooses a place, a habitat, an ecosystem, and then finds out the number of different species in the area. You know what a species is, isn't it? Well, a group of organisms. They are similar morphologically, physiologically. They can interbreed, mate among themselves, and produce offspring that can also produce offspring. That is, they can interbreed to produce a fertile offspring. That's a species. Now, species diversity, as I have said, environmentalist chooses an area to find out two things. One, the number of different species in the area, and two, the relative abundance of the different species in the area. Now, let's say we have an area like this. This area or habitat, I have drawn organisms in it. How many different species are there in this area? Species diversity finds out the number of different species in an area. So you see, I have this species, that. So here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different species in this habitat or area. Now let's look at this other habitat or area. The number of different species in the area. I have this, that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 species we have in this area. And you see there are more different species in this area than here. So the ecologists say that this area has more different species, and so this area has more species richness. So I go back here and say that the number of different species in the area indicates species richness. So this area has a higher species richness than this area. So this area with a higher species richness, example is like rainforest habitat or ecosystem. This area with a lower species richness is like savanna, grassland, or it can have very few species like in a desert. So species diversity looks at the number of different species in an area, which indicates the species richness, and not only the species richness, but species diversity also looks at the relative abundance of the different species in the area. What it means is, when you are looking at abundance, you are looking at population size, the total number of individuals of a specific species in a specified area. So, if I look at this species, for instance, and I want to find the population size, I count the number of the individuals of this species, and if I say this area is 1 square meter, then I know that there are 4 of this in a square meter. Then I come to look at this species. There are also 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 in a square meter. This species, there are 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 in a square meter. These are 2 and 2. So look at the abundance of the different species in the area. Then I come here and look at the abundance of the different species in the area. Look here, we have 2 of this in 1 square meter, if this is a square meter. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, plenty of this in a square meter. You see that the population sizes of here, they are closer. And so when an ecologist is looking at the relative abundance, gives it a name, species evenness. So the relative abundance of the different species in an area indicates species evenness. What is the species evenness? Is it more even or less? That is also measured. So these are the two indices that are looked at when species diversity is determined. Species richness and species evenness. Now, how to find out these? There are tools to count the number of the different species, which we'll discuss in a good time. If you have trees, big ones like this, we can tag them. You put a tag on the tree that this, I have counted this. Put a tag on it, count it and put a tag on it, count and put a tag on it. So we can count individuals, that makes the species. But then, when the species is like grass or tiny ones, you can't easily count them, then we use a quadrat to find out the numbers. These ones will be talked about, and how to find the abundance, to find the population sizes. One can decide to find the population density or the population frequencies. We will talk about these in a good time. So, having known what species diversity is, the question we are going to tackle now is, why is it important to study the species diversity? You have an area, you know the numbers and abundance of the various species, then it will give you knowledge of the economic potential of the species in the area. Because you know the species, these are the species that is going to give medicine, food, is going to give lumber, clothes, etc. So you know the economic potential of the various species in the area that can be tapped. And so advice to government, and then it will also be a good advice to agriculturists who knows the type of species that is in the area, the climate, the soil conditions that favor those species, if they are species for food that can be bred or grown in similar climates. So very good advice to agriculturists to use and to grow plenty of food. Even if it's not in that place, you know there are species there that can be used. And then also conservation needs. If some of the fishes, the abundance is so little, then you know those species needs to be conserved, and so conservation biologists will put in plans to work on to save those species. Then the species numbers and abundance, that is diversity, known over time, because as time goes on, the place will be checked to see how the various species is doing with time and climate, and this enables scientists to extrapolate and know the future, what happens to the habitat or the ecosystem and the species, so that measures will be put in place to keep the habitat the way it will stand. So for future studies, these areas, the species diversity will have to be studied from time to time in order to enable what kind of future studies that needs to be done in the area, because the biodiversity is very, very important. Even if one is lost, extinct is gone forever. So this is what time will allow us talking about species diversity, and it's important to study. Have a good day. Thank you very much. Goodbye.